Finally.
Oh, okay, cool.
Mr. B.K. Fulton.
Uh-oh.
Oh, this is such an amazing honor for you to come down here and for you to be a part of the Cane River Film Festival.
Thank you.
And certainly, as we were looking at your movie, I just sat there over and over again and I began to think, wow, that's powerful. That is so powerful. The storyline was powerful. Everything about, you and I spoke a little bit a few minutes ago about the lighting. I did not see what you saw. I saw a genius at work. I've done a little bit of reading about you, and I know that you are doing some amazing things. And because you're doing some amazing things, I'm wondering, when do you sleep?
You want me to answer that?
Yeah, because I need to know. I'm trying to figure out, how can someone, I think you've done like 20 movies since 2017?
Yeah.
And you are being a part of, you were just participating with the Oscars.
Uh-huh.
Was that a couple of days ago?
Last weekend, yeah.
Last week, but you were somewhere 2 days ago.
Yeah, I guess. Where were we at, honey? We were just in L.A. Yeah.
In LA,
Yeah.
right. So you are traveling all around the world, and it looks to me like you are opening doors for people, and that you are...
Don't forget the 2 Broadway shows.
Oh, I'm so sorry, the 2 Broadway shows. It's like, are there 13 books?
19.
19, my number is off. But you are doing some amazing work just in the field of arts and entertainment, in the field of e-commerce. You're just doing a lot of different things. And when I look at just a glimpse, I feel like I would do it an injustice to just say what I'm reading about you. Could you tell us more about what you're doing right now, and tell us about how your why is even fitting into the Cane River Film Festival, and how
You
how
got a
might
whole
you
bunch
take
of
that
questions
into
all
Hollywood?
together. That's the hard stuff. Let's rewind a little bit. I sleep when I can. I used to think sleep was overrated, but I approach things with a scientist curiosity. And so when I started studying sleep and why mammals sleep so much, I learned how important it was for healing, for rejuvenation, for mental acuity. And so now I try to sleep at least 5 to 7 hours.
In a 24-hour
In
period.
a 24-hour period. It doesn't usually work out that way, so I'll wake up in the middle of the night sometimes, but my dear wife is patient with me, and she'll give me a kiss and tell me she'll see me when I come back.
Oh, what a
And
blessing.
I'll wake up to write music, or I'll get an idea, and I'll try to capture it. Nikki Giovanni taught me to keep a notebook by the side of the bed, and then because the ideas come, and you just never know when they're going to come, and you want to try to capture them, especially when they're good ones. Each of us has something that we're supposed to do. Out of now, approaching 8 billion people on the planet, amazingly, we all have a unique fingerprint. And I think part of it is because there is a unique imprint that we get to make. And if you don't do what you are here to do, if you don't do what God made you to do, it won't get done.
Absolutely.
And so I feel like at this phase of my life, I am now in alignment with my assignment. And I know I'm supposed to tell these stories because of the way stories of allies, stories of love, stories of faith, stories of friendship, brotherhood, hard work, resilience, tenacity, all those things contributed to the guy that's in front of you now, who wasn't always a confident speaker, who wasn't always asked to lead this or lead that. I was flunking out of college and engineering school, and I went to the dean of sociology, and I thought that maybe you mind? That's
Okay, yeah, no problem. I was saying, if it was helping or not.
Yeah, no. And he said, well, college isn't for everybody. and maybe you should consider the Army. And so I signed up on his advice,
Wow.
thinking that he would know. And I didn't really like it that much, but I figured, I'd go do service because, engineering school wasn't working out. And so I went to the library to plan my final escape from Virginia Tech, and I was telling some folk earlier that I came across the E185.5 section, and I think that was the divine part of this story, because it's a big library. And for me to end up in the section that I needed to be in for what I needed then, because I was going to make a life decision, leave college. But instead, I started picking up these books about guys that looked like me, and they were doing all this great stuff, co-inventing lights, and doing third rails, and inventing the stoplight, and selling patents to General Electric. And please, so I'm like, wait a minute. And initially I got angry. And I went to this professor, we were talking about light bulbs and Thomas Edison. I raised my hand. It's like, what about Lewis Latimer? Blah, 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 blah. And he was like, I never learned that.
Wow.
He's like, okay, so I'm going to check it out, and I'm probably going to check out, and then I'll add it to the lecture. So then I said, oh, he's not racist.
Just didn't know.
He didn't know. And we don't get taught the stuff about other people. And I realized I was not as aware about other groups as I should be. For example, I've committed this year to learning more about other cultures. For example, 2 months ago, if you'd have said, name one thing, scientific thing that the Hispanic community has contributed to our society, I wouldn't have had a good answer. So I decided to make myself aware. Did you know every time you cut on your color television, you have to thank Guillermo Gonzalez Camarena, who filed the original patent for color TV in 1940. But we don't know that.
Right.
So if you don't have actual facts about groups or people, then you allow the stereotypes
To teach.
about those groups to be what you think about them. And so then if you don't have anything useful or meaningful or important to fill in as you think about groups or people while we're learning, then you end up accepting crazy stuff.
That makes absolutely no sense.
A lot of times will make no sense, but in our attempt to understand our world, and we develop these worldviews, you develop these beliefs about who does what and what value people add. And so at the end of the day, I'm getting to the answer to your question the long way. And so you said, what are some of the other things I'm doing? So I got into the movie business to try to help young people to appreciate what I learned when I read those books that helped me to become the best version of myself. I went on to run a little phone company called Verizon, and then I had, at the height of, before I retired, I think I had 45,000 employees and about 5.6 billion in revenue. And so there's that. And then when I retired in 2015, I wrote the first book, a book about my little sister, and then did a bunch of children's books, then did a couple of novels. My first nonfiction novel won a Nonfiction National Book Award. It's called Tale of the Tea, and it's about the power of honest conversations to heal. I chair, 7 companies or so. And we've got a couple of cybersecurity companies, a couple of cannabis companies, and own a part of a distribution company, own a part of MoviePass. So in the next 60 days, you're going to be able to hit this app, and MoviePass comes up and has all the movies anywhere in the country, and you go to. And if you're one of our members, you get to go for free.
So how does
And-
someone become a member?
And you go and you sign up when we announce it. Yeah. And we'll get a little piece on every movie. So not just my movies, any movie.
Any
So
member.
even here, wherever, So
Awesome.
MasterCard's our partner, so you get a MasterCard, it says MoviePass on it. So basically we brought it back. Mark Wahlberg and HBO are doing a documentary on us that'll be out probably in the next 90 days. What else are we doing? A couple more Broadway shows. I'm writing one. We're bringing back The Wiz. We're talking about doing Soul Train with John Legend. Our last show was The Piano Lesson with Samuel Jackson, John David Washington, and Daniel Brooks. and that was the highest grossing August Wilson show in Broadway history,
Wow.
and the highest grossing revival of all time on Broadway. So not too bad for a kid from Virginia.
That is
And then we have, there's probably a couple, I'm building a school. So Media U is a project to create a film school with university credits. Most people trying to get into film school can't get in. So 97% unmet demand. You know, people watch movies, like you'll watch, you know, any of the Fablemans, Steven Spielberg. Everybody knows the name Steven Spielberg. Steven Spielberg couldn't get into film school. He did not go to film school. You know, I mean, he lived in my building when he filmed Lincoln in Richmond. And I love the man. Good guy. But people don't know that some of the most storied directors never went to actual film school. And so it's not a prerequisite for telling stories and being creative, et cetera. And so we created this school to have people who are actually in the business and winning and award winners to teach the young people how to use the tools of their time. So we say we're creating the next million media makers, and we're reducing the cost. So Columbia has a film school. I think after you finish Columbia's film school, if you take loans or pay for it, somebody's going to spend $150,000 to $250,000. 2 years after finishing film school at Columbia. It's Ivy League.
Yes.
The average salary is $60,000. Most of the people come out and don't get jobs making movies.
Yeah.
So that's the other thing. Most people can't get in, and for the people that do get in, when you come out, you're probably not going to be making movies.
Now you're gonna owe money.
And you're going to owe somewhere between $150,000 and $250,000. It's crazy. It's insane. It's an elitist kind of thing. And so myself and my business partner, Adam Leipzig, decided to create a university where people get taught by real world professionals who are active, working, people that have won awards and know what they're talking about. And now we're going to reduce the cost, the barriers to entry, also for those middle, career professionals who just want to skill up. You know, we'll have that for them. Turns out that probably 80% of the jobs in media in the world are outside of Hollywood. As more and more companies are doing videos and commercials and things like that.
And creating content?
Creating content. A little known fact, 80% of the media consumed in the world comes from the United States.
Really?
So that's why it's important to have diverse voices in. So right now, all the heads of studios are white men. I'm pretty sure, I'm just thinking, there's one that might have just promoted a woman. But for the most part, it's mostly white guys. And so the kind of pictures that get a green light are pictures that fit how they see the world.
Okay.
And so it'll be fighting films, boxing films, spy films, and you don't get the women protagonists as often as we probably should. I mean, you guys are at least half the planet. And so you'd think it'd be more stories.
Right.
There's a wonderful documentary that kind of shows this. It's called This Changes Everything. It's on Netflix. A friend of mine helped to finance that, so we're actually working on another movie about a guy named Charlie Wiggins that we'll probably try to film it next year, called Erased. And it's about this guy who was just this badass driver, and the knock against him was he was African American.
Okay.
And so he couldn't race in Indy, so he created his own league.
Awesome.
And was really famous. There was this Indy race, and Dillinger was one of his proteges, but there's this other white kid, and he said, "Will you teach me how to drive a car?" He said, "I'll teach you." And he taught this kid, and he said, "You know what, I want you to enter this race. I can't get in it because they won't let me because I'm black, but I can get you in, and you drive my car, I'll be the mechanic, and you're going to win the race." The guy gets in. They say, "Well, he can't be your mechanic. He can be your janitor."
Wow.
So the guy's driving Charlie's car. Charlie's the man. He said, "Okay, no problem." So he put on the janitor suit. And then when the car would pit, or they take it into a garage, they close the door, and Charlie would work on the car, open the door, send them back out. The guy won the race.
Awesome.
Charlie had so much grit that back then they had to drive on these dirt tracks in the smaller leagues. And so they would wet the track so there's not so much dust, because all the dust creates it's blinding. Imagine these old cars, all this dust, and you can't see, high-speed formula for accidents. So Charlie, they were saying, well, we can't let you drive here because those races aren't sanctioned, but we'll come out and check you out. So they kept stalling, and the track is drying and drying and drying. So all of a sudden, it's like driving in a tornado.
Oh, wow.
And so Charlie's in the front of the race, and he sees it's all cloudy. So he starts pointing up and telling the other drivers, look at the lights. Judge where you are by the lights on the track. And so that's how they were able to avoid some accidents.
That's
But
ingenious.
then at some point, there's an accident, and a car flips on Charlie and crushes one of his legs.
Oh.
And he ends up losing the leg and one eye. But he said so much grit that he goes into his garage and gets a log and makes another leg
Wow.
so that he could drive. These are the kinds of people that we're not talking about,
But we need to talk
that
about
we
it.
need to talk about.
And
It's not a dig against anybody else.
Right.
It is the human spirit personified. And as I was saying, in life there's these mirrors and windows. So the mirrors are when you see yourself, the windows are when you look out and see others. And if I can look out and learn from other people and their experience, they can
Do the
look
same.
into my world and do the same. And so it becomes human stories. But what we've allowed ourselves to do is get off the rails with all this race and all this stuff, and it's all made up. It is
Right.
actually made up stuff.
Absolutely.
But we live our lives by these crazy notions. Republican, Democrat, this, that. It's laughable. It's so crazy. And so a terrible waste of time. And what I've realized is that, my assignment is to use the screen to tell the kind of stories that tell people they're enough, and all people. And to tell the people if we work together, we can do more. If we work together, then we can help each other to be the best versions of ourselves. And it resolves in love. And my faith tells me that. And so people ask me, why do you do this? I said, it's my faith. It is my faith. I said, God is better than good. Chicken is good. Catfish with the etouffee on it is good. Them boudin balls is good. Okay? But God is great.
He's great. He's
God is
awesome.
great. It's
Amen.
multiple levels up. And when you mix your love, your passion, your willingness to work, and some faith up in there, you can accomplish anything.
That is
Amen.
so prolific. I mean, I'm just sitting here listening to all of the amazing things that you're sharing with us today, and I'm just thinking that, God, you're walking in your purpose. And not only are you walking in your purpose, but you're also shining a light on all of us, and you're allowing us to see that there's no reason that we cannot look at our goals, set goals, and accomplish them. And
Yeah.
so this is.
Well, one of the things I'll share, so, so say today, so usually now, we've done 20 feature films, everything's been released in theaters. Any given time in the worldwide, 5,000 to 10,000 feature-length films are done. The kind of the short films, there's probably several 100,000 done worldwide in a year. But of the feature films, so let's say 5,000 to 10,000, only about 2 to 5% of them actually get distribution. So where you show up in a theater or on demand on digital, things like that. So 100% of our films have gotten distribution. So we're way beating the odds. And part of it is, show business. So I've got the creative side, but I'm also a businessman. So I bring the business part. So I don't even start doing a project unless I know where it's going to end up. Because part of it is, I didn't get into this business to be a failed filmmaker. If they don't do well enough to what's called recoup, then I don't get to tell the story, I don't get to keep going. So it's important that we have the entertainment value, the music that's good, the lighting. So what you didn't see here, but you learn to keep on going. You know, just like we're kind of sitting in the dark, but we got enough of us.
And you know what?
You know, a few gathered in His name, and God is there with you, so that's good.
Because
But
God works well in dark situations.
hey, in all situations, there you go. And so, but what you didn't see, you probably saw 20% of the film Freedom's Path because we added lighting as a character.
Yeah.
And so when it first came out, I was like, it's too dark. And I'm telling Fern, tell the guy to cut the turn the brightness up.
Yeah.
He's got it down, so it looked like it was dark most of the time. So when you watch it again on demand in June or in digital, you will say, oh, I didn't see that before. Because there's a lot more stuff in the film. But one of the things, one of the lessons, couple of lessons. One is you push through. You go with the flow. You know,
Thank you
you
for sharing that.
you work. You take the people that are willing to hang in there with you, and you work with them. And then the other thing is, you know, life presents these situations, and they're rarely always optimal. And so you make the most of it. But that's part of, I guess, being faithful, right? Is that if you knew the answer, then what purpose would it be for you to have faith?
Yeah.
That's
Okay.
a sermon.
Okay? But because you don't know the answer, then you got to have a little faith to take some steps. And the deeper you get in that faith, the more sure-footed you become.
Okay.
So I tell people that faith is like water, and it's accessible to all of us. You know, our planet's 3/4 water, we're 70% water. And on the surface of water, it can get rough sometimes. Matter of fact, there can even be a storm. But down in the deep, it's always calm. It's always serene. It's dark like this, okay?
Yeah.
But in the deep, those creatures aren't worried about what's on the top because they know it's passing. It's fleeting. Not worried about that storm. It's going to blow over. So when the trials and tribulations come up in your life, touch or tap into that deep faith and know that it's going to blow over.
That's
Know
rich.
that
That's rich in thought.
it's going to pass and you're going to be okay. You know, God blesses all of us to turn our dreams and ideas into their tangible equivalents. But you have to have the faith, be willing to do the work, and expect the outcomes. I tell people all the time, they say, BK, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? What do you think about, we just removed a bunch of Confederate monuments in Richmond.
In Virginia, right?
In Virginia. And they said, what do you think about that? And I said, well, I'm glad we're doing that. They said, why? I said, because we're better than that. You know,
Absolutely.
those are symbols of fear and hatred. You can say it's history all you want to, but they didn't go up after the war. They went up during a period of bloody Sundays and major racial riots and things like that. That's when you put them up. And you put them up to keep people in their place.
Still fear.
But see, and I'm glad you said that. So what happens when you have fear is you create policies that are driven by fear. So what do you do with fear? You try to block certain people's right to vote.
Absolutely.
You try to control women's bodies. You ban books.
Yes.
You increase access to guns when you're operating out of fear.
Right.
But let's just test that for a minute. Does it make sense? My young people are strong enough to deal with weapons, but too weak to deal with words. Make it make sense.
It doesn't make sense.
So what you're really saying is that you're so afraid that they may have their own agency and develop a competent mind
Developing the mind is
so that you don't want to tell them the truth.
Yes.
That's not good. That's not good. We're better than that. And so by making this particular film, In Freedom's Path, if these people can come together in 1883, why can't we do it in 2023? You know, and it's just little nuggets like that. We're making a film. Well, Chevalier is coming out in April, so actually it's going to be here. It's one of the things coming soon down right outside out front. And because I was going to make a film on Chevalier de Saint-Georges, and if I don't like this one, I'll do one anyway. I'm going to have Denzel play in it, and Terrence Howard, and then a guy from London playing a young Chevalier. Has anybody heard of Chevalier de Saint George? Everybody know about? So you got one hand there. You want to tell them who Chevalier is? And then,
Because I'm a musician and it was exposed to us through our research at our African American History Museum. So composer, musician.
composer, musician, exactly. So let me summarize. He was a mulatto. He was a mulatto, part French, part African. Joseph Bellon Chevalier de Saint George for short, was a champion fencer in all of Europe in the late 1700s.
Okay.
He was also a virtuoso on the violin. Marie Antoinette asked him to head the Symphony of France. He was her violin instructor. Mozart was 16, and he was hawking his wares to go to France to learn from the greats. Chevalier was considered the greatest. Mozart lived in the same building where Chevalier played. There's no way he didn't hear Chevalier's music. Mozart's like 11 years younger than Chevalier. Chevalier created a legion of 1,000 swashbucklers that he called the Legion. One of his lieutenants was T. Alexander Dumas. T. Alexander would go on to be the highest ranking person of African descent ever in a European army. T. Alexander Dumas' son was Alexander Dumas,
The Three Musketeers?
writer of The Three Musketeers, The Count of Monte Cristo, The Iron Mask. So in summary, the cornerstones of French literature, influencer of Mozart and virtuoso on the violin, and the current on-guard stance in fencing, all by the same guy
Wow.
that we know nothing about. It's insane that we don't know about, that we don't share this story. How many people would it inspire? In fact, to look him up, the insanity of it is you have to look up the Black Mozart. Now here he was the one, it's the other way around. He influenced Mozart, not the other. Mozart, he didn't borrow from Mozart. Mozart borrowed from him. But because our world gets so twisted with the facts, I mean, this stuff easy to find. Easy to find. You know, we had a symphony in Richmond, and they said, BK, you're going to be so proud of us. We're doing Saint George, doing Saint George. I was like, great. Then they sent the flyer with hints of Mozart. I'm like, oh, there you go with that dumb stuff. What's this hints of Mozart? Well, we just wanted to put in so that our patrons knew that what kind of music and how familiar what they could expect. I was like, yeah, but you're knocking an original. You know, and you're still operating off the world view that somehow people of color weren't a part of classical music. There's another guy, and I'm blanking on his name, in the 1500s, something Vincente, who was probably the first African composer known to do the kind of symphonies and things that we've come to appreciate. But at the end of the day, you know, great for me as a filmmaker, because there's all these stories that haven't been told that I get to tell. So instead of kind of having to come up with something out of whole cloth, I can pull from these kind of hope diamonds, I call them, of stories. And I love stories of intergenerational and interracial and interethnic collaboration, because I want to remind people that we don't get here without a lot of folk from many communities and different communities working together in spite of the crazy laws, in spite of the crazy times, in spite of people having fears. It's okay, in fact, to have some fears. But if you stay with that fear, that's not okay. Let's learn, let's figure it out, let's be who God made us to be. And it's my faith. I remember one of the most profound things I ever heard, and then I'm going to shut up. I'm going to play something for you. I'm going to give you all a rare thing because you stayed the long time.
Thank you.
I forgot what was I going to say. Remind me what was I saying?
Rare.
Jackie, remind him.
Yeah. Oh man, it was a good point.
Someone in history that did something very good.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm sorry.
You're gonna share the music with them?
Yeah. It'll come back to me. All right. So I'll share the music, then it'll come back. If it doesn't come back, I wasn't supposed to tell y'all. All right. So this musical.
Like it takes a village.
Huh?
You were saying that it takes a village and all these people have to come together to create these experiences regarding the laws or regarding, you know.
Yeah. No, that's close. Yeah. Well, Richards, am I sharing that?
All the time.
Yeah. Well, you know what? So and it's okay. And you know what? The other thing that's fun about that is having, being authentic.
Mhm.
People recognize when you are. And that's probably the other good thing is that people like myself or John or creatives, Kelly, nobody's perfect. Nobody. And that's not part of the assignment. We don't have to be, you know. And I don't mind even vulnerable moments because you're learning, you know. And when you get to a place where you get out of your own way and you become this vessel, and I remember what I was going to say, one of the most profound things I ever heard was when Ida B. Wells' granddaughter was talking about her work, and someone said, why did your grandmother risk her life to go and document, you know, lynchings in some of these small rural towns where she could have been killed herself?
Right.
And I mean, she was like, I think she went to Columbia. I think she was a journalism person. So a lot of people don't know this about her. She was an early investigative journalist. But here was her answer. Why do I risk my life to do this? And she said, it's my faith. She said that I believe in every person, there is at least one chord of decency. And if I can strike that chord with the truth, the chord will sound in justice and in righteousness.
My God.
How beautiful is that?
That
That I am doing that because even as wretched as you are, I think there's one chord of decency in there, and I'm going to hit you with the truth, and let's see what happens. And her faith tells her to keep going. And that is just one of the most powerful things. And so for me, I can relate to that. And when you have that deep faith, and you believe in people, and you start seeing your brothers, human beings, a whole new world opens up, a whole new opportunity. So when I'm traveling in China or in Italy or in Africa, I'm not there with those people. I'm there with brothers and sisters. I'm 17% Scandinavian. Hell, I almost married a white woman. My wife's 44% Irish. And that's okay, you know? And that's okay. You know, we all mixed up with different stuff if we tell the truth.
Yes,
And
absolutely.
we look into it. But I'm going to play something. Or anybody recording, you got to stop
Okay.
now.